Thank you so much for inviting me to talk to you and to share my story with your community. I think community is really key, especially when you're a solopreneur or an entrepreneur, and maybe even when you're a female entrepreneur. Like there's no day for us, right? There's no community. So being able to talk to you and share my story is just like a dream come true and a gift. So thank you for having me. And so your question is a good one. What am I doing right now? I don't actually know. When I set out to work for myself, I went on a journey first, like an inward journey, and I purposely didn't take jobs, and I purposely didn't lean into the things that I was doing before, because intuitively I knew that there was something bigger and better out there, and I couldn't, if I just stepped it from one experience to another experience, I was at risk of like rinsing and repeating versus building something new. I left kind of a corporate job in a great tech company doing good work. You know, I led teams, and I kind of left that environment and then went like on a secondment of sorts that was self-directed, and it was still work adjacent. I went to conferences that felt right and felt like there could, but I was sort of just looking for friends in my new work world. And I did a lot of retreats, and I picked up art and just sort of discovered what I love in life and work again. And then a year later, incorporated my companies. I have two. I'm a lawyer, so I have a law corporation and my consulting company. My consulting company is a benefit corporation, which means that I am committed to doing work in a way that adds a positive benefit to the world. So I set up those companies and then truly just got curious and had conversations with people and said, here's my basket of skills and my experience and my story of what I've done professionally in my life. Who are you? What are your needs? What are you looking for? And every once in a while, the stars line up and there's something I can do for them. And so sometimes it's just doing legal work, which I love, and helping fill in gaps in legal teams when they need somebody who's stepped out for a while. And other times it's partnering with other founders who want to build great companies and, you know, leaning into a broader skill set to help set up an operation in a way that fulfills that company's mission and purpose. So whenever I'm chatting to people about what I'm doing, it purposely, intentionally defies a tiny soundbite, because I'm intentionally just moving through the world with curiosity and openness and a spirit of generosity and trust. And what seems to be coming back are matters and clients and projects that are a good fit, not just on a work front, but also on the life front. Just recently, I had an engagement with a really amazing company who works in podcasts, and we did a 2-day strategy session together. And at the end of the strategy session, it just felt natural and normal and right to invite them into my house and have dinner with my family on the Friday. They're so fun and they're so interesting, and we had such a great 2 days, and I really wanted them to get to see my life. One of the founders is an old friend of mine from the early days, and I thought after, we talk about ideal client profiles a lot, like to use the business term, and I thought, I think my ideal client profile is a person who I can do great work with, that I can use my zone of brilliance to help them with what they're doing in their purpose, values-driven journey, but also that I want to ask my husband to make dinner for, because I don't cook. So if it's okay, these are good people, I want them in my house, and my husband's gonna make a meal, that feels alignment that I can't really put into words. It just feels right. And it's really been very fulfilling to do it that way.
I'm curious about the benefit corporations, because it's not just companies and large companies that have the opportunity to set themselves up as benefit corporations, or to think about how they're having an impact on society outside of their for as well, but can also infuse it into your structure. Do you mind sharing a little bit about sort of why and how you set that up and what it means in a little bit more detail?
Why did I set up my company as a benefit corporation? It's interesting. I didn't set up my law corporation as a benefit corporation, although I could have. It's just there were more regulatory requirements around the law corporation, and I wanted to be streamlined. So there's a chance that both could be at some point. But for my consulting company, which is just called Jennifer Singhla Consulting, like I'm the anti-brand, or I am the brand. I don't quite know, but I just thought I don't know what it is yet. So I'm just gonna call it who I am, because it is who I am, and then we'll make decisions as things emerge. And I set it up as a benefit. It was no question for me. I knew I was gonna set it up as a benefit corporation on day one, because I had an experience at a prior company that was an early B corporation, and I saw what happens from a culture, vision, purpose, business decisions point of view when you intentionally structure yourself as an organization that has dual goals, where you're all about, of course I need to make some money and add value for my clients from an ROI perspective, but when you intentionally set yourself as an organization that has social purpose at its heart, it's interesting how all the decisions that follow once you're incorporated have those two things top of mind. And it makes it a lot easier, I think, to set yourself up as a company that is good for the world or adding a positive social benefit when structurally you've got that frame in place already. So benefit corporations in British Columbia, Vancouver, this is where I'm registered, require a public benefit statement that's baked into your articles of incorporation. And so mine requires that I support a certain group of folks, businesses with, are values driven, social ventures, nonprofits, essentially the ecosystem of organizations out there that are generating positive social impact. That's who I serve. And they don't have to be B Corp benefit corporation. They might just be like benefit corporation curious and want to move in that direction of being a company that's not just about turning a profit, but also about adding something to society, adding something to their employee base. So that's the universe of folks that I am focused on supporting, and I'm focusing on supporting them in a way that adds a positive benefit to society. So that's baked into my legal structure, and because it is, I have regulatory requirements to prove it. Year over year, I need to do an evaluation. I need to have a standard that I measure myself against, which is open, and I've chosen. It's a bit new and nuanced, but the B Corp certification standard is kind of the standard one that you would measure yourself against. But because I'm a solopreneur and I'm not ready yet to certify, I chose something called Nature's Principles, which is a concept from an organization called Biomimicry 3.8. And essentially, Nature's Principles say, if you look to nature already knows how to do things sustainably. It already knows how to build in a regenerative way. And so if you pull those principles into your business, again, naturally, you're going to start moving in a way that's sustainable and good for the world. So I pulled that in as my standard, and then you produce a report. And again, when you're a solopreneur, it's for yourself. You're sort of just doing this self-assessment to say, how did I do against my intention to build business in a way that's different? And you find what's good, you find your learning opportunities, and then you need to produce that report in a way that's public facing. So that's the only part I haven't quite done yet, because I'm thinking about how to do that in a way that serves the community as well. And I think when I produce my report, I'm probably going to do it in a lunch and learn or webinar-like way, so I can help other people who are curious in benefit corporations learn how to do this regulatory process. Because I have the benefit of being a lawyer and somebody in social ventures. So I'm always looking for ways in my business to just give back when I can, and this is one of those areas that's really opaque to a lot of people. I thought, well, when I do my report, I should explain how I did my report, why I picked my standard, why it matters, so people can see how easy it is and join the movement. Instead of making it stuffy and corporate, I could say, listen, my consultancy is just me right now, so we're celebrating my first year in business. right? So I just have people come in and do all the regulatory things that I need to do, but say, how did I do in my commitment to run a business that sustains me as a human being and also delivers the impact that I'm looking to deliver, and be honest about it and open and vulnerable and say, here were my challenges this year, here are the learnings, and then the community hopefully will get the benefit of my missteps and misadventures.
I think you just made regulatory reporting something.
Can you imagine though, if it's like I'm doing my public benefit report and it's gonna be a party and you're gonna learn something. What's one tangible example that impacted my decision making? We talk about like marketing and branding and what do you do when you're a solopreneur to get folks to know you, and I thought about doing the traditional thing of having a website and putting LinkedIn posts up that were, here's what my services are and here's what I do. And because it was important to me mostly to move through kind of from a feminine energy point of view, where it's about putting my antenna up and waiting for someone else's antenna, like the signals to meet, and making sure it feels right and making sure the relationship is really true and authentic and that there is genuine value on both sides. It's not transactional. I decided that it would be really weird if I started in a transactional way with the normal transactional marketing and branding tools that we use. Not to say I won't use them at any point. I just thought you should start as you intend to continue is one of my mantras. And so I thought I'm just going to trust that there are people out there who want to work with me that I want to work with, where there's mutual value and reciprocity in the nature of the relationship. And instead of investing in, you would know the word better than like the digital marketing, the Google ads or whatever it is, and having like a brand and a slick logo, I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to meet people and have coffees without an agenda and get to know them and what they're all about, and follow up if it looks like there's something there, and if there isn't, that's okay. We'll follow up again in 6 months. And it's funny because when I sort of thought, okay, I need to make some money now. Like when I was done my self-imposed secondment, it was interesting how all those conversations and things that had been percolating came to fruition right at the right time. And it's also really, it just feels really good and fulfilling and healthy to operate this way, where I'm not constantly feeling like I'm performing or pitching or using legal or corporate mumbo jumbo to describe what I am and what I do. It really is just, we're trading stories and seeing if there's value, and then figuring out, what makes sense from a pricing point of view and a pricing format, and making sure it feels good first, and then we move forward. And then it's like game time to add value. I bring all my professional bearing to the engagement, and if it's legal or operational or HR, leadership coaching, team building, I can go into my toolkit from my 15 years of practicing and bring all of that to help add value to these corporations. So it doesn't feel like a bait and switch. It feels like just a natural kind of carrying on of the conversation. And I can take what I have and really tailor it for the client that I have and say, okay, this one really needs me to be, a capital G, capital C general counsel. And be like, this one needs me to be more blended. So I'm going to be a chief operating officer or a chief of staff. And so it's fun to get to kind of put the puzzle together. It's like I'm genuinely out there making people that even when the engagements are over, I know I'm never going to let it go. I'm always going to be curious and interested in what's going on in their business and their families and their lives. And so it just feels like a nice way to work. Oh, did I ever feel, I did feel misaligned with my purpose, but I didn't know I was misaligned for a lot of years. I started off my legal career in private practice with 2 big global law firms. Like you could think about the show Suits. That was me. Maybe less crime committing and fraud. I was in that world for a really long time, and I really loved serving clients. That's where I honed my chops in client service and being the advocate and the warrior for your clients. And I thought my purpose was just to be excellent at law, right? And I really worked hard towards that and felt some sense of fulfillment towards it. And then after a while, it was sort of like, well, this is not, like, you just sort of feel it. This is not right. And then I was lucky enough to join a plucky little social enterprise in Canada at startup. And the reason I flocked to that company was because I was going to get to be a lawyer still, but I was going to get to be a lawyer and a business partner in a company that was trying to do something that really hadn't been done before. It was building a culture where people are treated like fully formed adults, and where the products and services are all about helping enterprise companies move to a future state where it's profit and purpose. So all of this was really new, but I was still going to get to do my chosen profession, and that felt purpose-driven for me, right? I thought, okay, I get to add something back to the world and do something good for the world, and genuinely filled my cup up in a way that I didn't even know was possible at work. But after a while, even there, I was like, what is my purpose? What is, like, purpose. The word became kind of like nonsensical after a while, right? I'd overused it. And in my work, like, I always take on coaching. I take coaching for myself. I had some business coaches and maybe trying to work through a purpose statement for me. And I realize now that the problem was I was doing it intellectually. I was writing it down, and I was, there were questions on these pages, and what do you care about? Like, just very formulaic. And after I left that tech company and took my self-imposed secondment, I realized that purpose isn't something you can figure out in your head. You really have to go and figure out what your body is telling you. And my body had been telling me for a really long time in those other jobs that something was wrong and I wasn't listening to it. And it turned out that I have this chronic illness that had been sort of always present, always irritating me, always a problem, but I'd been pushing it to the side so that I could fulfill my quote purpose at work. And once I woke up to it and listened to my body's signals, it led me on this journey where I realized my purpose as a person can't be defined. I exist because I exist. I'm a human being in nature. There's really nothing, for me, in my belief, there's nothing more to it than that. I'm here to live this life the best way I can and try to do the best I can. So that gave me like a real sense of ease and peace, because now I just move through life and I try to be the best person I can be. I try to be the best mom I can be. I try to take care of my body and honor what it needs. But I don't feel a sense of, if I don't do X, Y, Z at work, I've failed. I don't have that anymore. And I didn't realize how much it was causing harm and really pulling me off where I want to be, which is just working with wonderful people doing things that are good for the world. So when I look at my companies, though, they have a purpose because they're not human, right? They're maybe an extension of my humanness, but they are there to serve a purpose in the market and to serve a purpose in the corporate world. And so I have no problem at all defining a corporate purpose. And I think a corporate purpose is really wonderful because it takes what is an intellectual entity. Like, corporations are just people-made or human-made, but they are made, they're constructed. They're not of nature, they're not of our bodies. And so I think it's really helpful to take a corporate entity and infuse it with purpose, right? Which brings it a little more into the human element, which is why my companies are about focusing on the social venture ecosystem and helping those companies move into a future that's profit and purpose and values driven. But getting that alignment and seeing it as two separate things took a lot of soul searching and a lot of cold dips and hikes in the woods. A lot of time actually away from my family and just figuring out, I think that's a big question of what is life all about and what does it all mean for a person. I think is really, it's hard and challenging and maybe even dangerous to do if you're just doing it for a corporate objective. Like, your purpose and your company's purposes, if there's a misalignment, that's going to be painful and you're going to see signals that show up for you. They should be relatively in the same direction, but I don't think they're the same thing. I don't think that would be necessarily healthy. I want my work to be like a plus to my life. I want it to fit in, and I need it to be values aligned, which is why it's so important to me that I work with people who are good people, who have integrity, who want to do the right thing, who are generous and open-minded and curious and growth-oriented. I want to work with those people because it's who I want to be when I grow up. So we're helping each other. There's been times where work has taken an outsized impact in my focus, and achieving someone else's dream has been my central tenet. And I've never been able, at least, to put boundaries in place in a way that allowed me to maintain my core. I always sort of just fell into it. So I think if you're a solopreneur, entrepreneur, that enmeshment's gonna happen. However, there's an amazingly beautiful opportunity when you run your own business yourself and there's no one else telling you what to do, to build a business that actually helps nurture your life goals, right? Pick clients that are wonderful, pick work that sparks you up. If you can't always do work that sparks you up, pick work that sparks you up, and then have other work that maybe you do for other reasons that you get to choose, right? Like pick a format and the people that support you in nature's principles, not just in your work goals. And I think that enmeshment is gonna happen, and it's natural because it happens everywhere. And it's a lot easier to put those boundaries in place to some extent when you're running your own show versus when you're in a bigger organization. So you should take that opportunity and play with it and run with it and take risks and see what kind of magic comes out of it. The mistake that a lot of early founders and their journeys make is assuming that the way things have been done is the quote right way to do it, and just borrow it because it feels safe, right? To set up your company a certain way, or maybe you get advice from lawyers and accountants to incorporate this way versus that way, and they'll tell you it has to be done this way because they're worried about certain risks. But it's not always the case that's true. Sometimes there's a range of risks, and sometimes taking a chance and setting yourself up in a slightly different way or taking a slightly different approach pays off dividends because it's closer to what you're trying to build. Have a healthy skepticism of what the experts tell you to do. Get it checked out a second time. I worked with a founder, and I really enjoyed this about him. I worked with a founder earlier in my career who, when I would come forward with legal advice that, again, I had been taught from my private practice days and I knew was quote right, I would just parrot back what I knew, what I had learned, and I would get resistance in a great way. There would be questions like, why does it have to be done that way? And the questions were always related to, can't we do things better? Can't we do things in a more people-centric way? Can't we do things in a way that's values-oriented instead of just checking the box off? And it really trained me to rewire my brain. And that as business owners, we need to manage risks carefully because there's a lot when you start out. Like, you get your clients, you could run out of money, you could get in trouble with you never want to get in trouble with the tax authorities. There are certain risks that you are watching carefully. But if you are too tight about those risks and you just impute the standard way of doing things, you're going to end up with a standard company, and that might not be what you're trying to build. So it's okay to get curious, and if you have a legal partner who is saying it has to be done this way and only this way, you can, as the client, ask 1,000 questions. Why? Until you understand it. And if you don't like it because maybe it's not consistent with your goals, say, does it have to be done that way? Could we do it this way? Could we do it that way? I think that pushing for more, and there's always better, is going to lead you as a solopreneur to a better place. And it does require a little bit higher risk tolerance to do it that way. But the dividends are from that approach, I think, in my personal view, outweigh the benefit of taking sort of the easy, tried and true path, especially when you're building a company that is trying to break the mold and not just be profit-centered, but also in the business of treating employees like gold and adding value to your communities and building products and services that uplift. If that's your goal, challenging the status quo is going to be something you need to get comfortable with doing. So sometimes you might have to go do your own research so that when you're talking to your lawyer, accountant, your business partner, whatever it is, you can ask really good questions to make sure it is exactly aligned with your vision and mission. The best example I have is from my pre-solo days in my tech company world, where I was working with this visionary founder to build a company whose culture really did accelerate the moonshot, because we just, I was there as the employment lawyer to make sure that the laws were followed. You have to meet the regulatory requirements, of course, but how you get there is not as prescribed. And so we would do things like my favorite example is we needed employment agreements. And like in my training, I had a way that was bulletproof. There was no risks. It was airtight. This is how you do an employment agreement. And I gave it to the founder, and he was like, listen, if we put this in place with our employees, we're basically saying to them on day one, we don't trust you. We're planning for the worst, and it's in a language they don't understand. So it's already creating a disconnect in the relationship that we want with our team, which is we trust you, we think you're smart and can handle this, and we're willing to take on the risk of doing things differently, right? If we're gonna extend that trust, we're gonna get that trust back. And so he asked me to rewrite it, keeping all the important things in an employee offer letter that you need to have under the law, like manage the risks of the business, but do it in a way where you're talking to a human being, right? So that required next level thinking from law and all, writing and all that piece. But the value of that was that when an employee came into the company on day one, they didn't, you have your recruitment process where you sort of woo and you get people excited. If you hit a person with an offer letter on the heels of that that's completely contrary to what you've just sold them in terms of your culture, they're going to have a moment where they go, oh no, what have I signed up for? We don't want that, right? We want it to be a seamless experience. We want all those employee touch points, regardless of how it's been done in the past, to be aligned with the culture and the team that we're building. And so that's one example. And then the whole company was infused. At every turn, there were decisions made where it's, well, we could do our parental leave policy the way everyone does it, or maybe we could innovate it and be better and strive for better. So what happened on the heels of all of that hard thinking and risk taking and redesigning and reimagining how these status quo pieces played in, the culture is and was incredible and special and drew in top talent, because top talent wants to be treated like a fully formed adult and wants to have an experience that's consistent. And so that company was incredibly successful. It is incredibly successful, and in no small part to the commitment of the founder in those early days to strive more and push the status quo, even if it meant doing things a little bit differently. When you put yourself out in the market with your name as your company, and it really, truly, I'm just sort of trying to operate as authentically as I can with who I am as a person and hope for the best, like just trust that it's gonna work out. It means that you need a certain level of vulnerability when you're posting things on LinkedIn or when you're being invited to speak at conferences and host panels. It's you. There's no you and business you, it's just you. And so I've had to really work through that icky, vulnerable, exposed feeling, knowing that when you do that, there will be people out there who are going to think negatively of you, who are going to think, for whatever reason, it's like being vulnerable makes people uncomfortable. And so I know there are people in the world who read my LinkedIn posts and go, ugh. But I also know that in my being myself and vulnerable, that I'm creating space for other people to do the same. And for me, it's really important as a leader, whether I'm leading teams or just leading myself or my kids, that I take risks, that I show up and take risks. And if I get my ass kicked, I do it publicly, because it's like, I can survive it, so can you. We make mistakes, we say things we shouldn't say, we share too much, or whatever it is that's you. And at the end of the day, people really seem to resonate with that level of authenticity. We just want realness, right? So I am uncomfortable every day of my life in this new world, and I just see it as part of my contribution to the workspace, to just try to be honest to a fault and to share things if I think it's going to have value for one person, to hear my story about my illness or my story about my journey, I do it. And that little voice in the back of my head that, it represents the haters, I just sort of talk to it. And I'm like, hey, sorry you don't like me. You're lost. I mean, I don't want just people who only agree with me either, right? Like for me, a person I really like working with is a person who isn't going to take what I say at face value all the time. Like, as a lawyer who's been in the seat where I'm providing advice and I'm the expert, I really appreciate partners who poke. Like that founder I talked about, because they make me better in the process. It's like, why are you saying that? And I have to think about it and go, well, this is why I'm saying it, and here's what I think you should do, and why, and here are your options. But you get to choose, basically. So I think it's the healthiest relationships are the ones that aren't just toxically positive and everybody's a love fest all the time, but where there's a genuine creative exercise going on, where there's growth on both sides and discomfort on both sides. In my work now with these engagements where I'm helping companies formalize their operation and put their legals in place and kind of set their governance and their foundation of their company up so they can achieve their purpose and their profit goals, there are lots of moments where I'm stretched. Where I go, whew, I've never done that before, or this is a new way of thinking about it. And I found that because I work with clients who are good people and are open and curious and generous, I get grace, just like I give grace, right? So I think that, I don't know, I think maybe I've said 3 times now in this interview, I didn't realize it until we started talking, that one of my major experiences of being a solopreneur is leaning into discomfort and uncertainty and not trying to fix it. Just going, here it is, we're growing, this sucks, but I'm doing it. And then the community around me it just helps, because you're not alone, right? You're like, okay, we're all doing this hard, scary thing together and failing together, and I'm not on my own. Solopreneur doesn't feel right, because it's like, yeah, I have my own company, but I'm in this rich tapestry of an ecosystem, and my goal is to be helpful in it, right? Just help. I want to be a +1, not a -1. Honestly, I wish more founders and solopreneurs talked about money more. It's really weird. You go into conversations with people who are also providing services to companies, and we all talk around rates and structures and formats. No one wants to be like, well, here's what I'm charging in the format that seems to work. And I think if we shared openly how we're thinking about charging for services or how we're navigating those conversations, I think we would all be better off for it. Like, we're not in competition with one another all the time. Sometimes maybe, it depends if you're doing exactly the same thing. But even then, if someone was doing exactly what I'm doing, which would be hard because only I can do what I'm doing, right? Usually I find people who are doing things complementary to what I'm doing, and if I can't help a particular client, I know somebody who can. So we're helping each other that way. But I feel like we should just be open with each other about how it works. What clients can pay what on what schedules and what's worked for them, so that you don't have to trip over it. I always feel like I'm open those conversations up, and I try to be like candid about what my needs are, because I have this philosophy that everyone's needs get met, right? So I'm like, here's what I need to make this work so that I feel good about the value I'm providing and that I can pay my bills, and does that work for you? And if it doesn't, that's okay. Maybe we can figure something out where all of our needs get met. But I don't see anyone else having those conversations with other entrepreneurs, like to help them, because it's the most uncomfortable part of what we do, is figuring out, especially when you're operating from a place of relationship-based and non-transactional. At some point in time, it needs to become a little transactional. That's just the way the world works, right? So how to even navigate from, we're best friends now, we're gonna have dinner together, to what are you paying me to do and on what schedule, right? Like, that always feels like a hard turn. Oh, I mean, I'm a lawyer that's negotiated for 15 years, and I'm like, oh, I hate negotiating for myself. And the way that I I create bright lines for myself. I love meeting people. I'm a social person. I will hop on calls and people can borrow my brain, and like I'm happy to do that because I get something out of it. I enjoy it. If I have time and I'm not swamped with other work or clients, I'll be generous there. But for me, I think because I'm a lawyer and because I went to law school and because I'm licensed to practice, I kind of have this rule that like I don't read or write unless I'm being paid. And so it's really helpful to have those bright lines and go, okay, because at that point it would feel like I was being taken advantage of if I was doing that, right? So I don't want that to happen, and nor do my wonderful clients, right? So at that point I'm like, it feels like maybe we're moving into an area of our relationship where you want me to do something that I would feel better to be compensated for, and I'm happy to do it, and here's when I'm available, and here's some ideas around, depending on what you need, how it could look from a cost or payment perspective. And if it's too much, totally get it. Like I can always help you find somebody that's a bit more cost conscious if that's what you need. I found that eases the conversation a little bit too. If you know where your bright lines are and where you're navigating and you know why they exist, right? Then it's not just about I'm here to make as much money as possible. It's like, no, here are my needs and I'm open about them. Like I've always said, or thought, I guess, boundaries is kind of a weird word to me because it suggests separation, and what I want is closeness. And so instead of talking about boundaries, I talk about needs. If I share my needs and you share your needs, those are boundaries. But what it does is it brings us closer together because then we can work towards making sure our needs are met. So you could call, I don't really read or write unless I'm compensated, a boundary, or you could call it a need because I have a need to feel valued for the education and the training and the work that I did over the last 15 years as a lawyer and a business partner. And I've had really good mentors and coaches who have been consultants and entrepreneurs for decades. And every once in a while, if I get into a funny moment where I'm like, I feel like I'm giving away a lot of work for free right now and I don't quite know how to translate it, I will talk to them about it and they will say things like, yeah, the money conversation is rough. It's not fun because you built these relationships up and now you're changing, and so there's a risk that the relationship could fall apart if all of a sudden it feels transactional, and here are some of the ways I navigate that. And it's nice to have people reflect the discomfort of it and then give you some transitions or some conversational kind of tools that help you navigate that without feeling like you're moving off your goal to be authentic. So the thing that's really helped me in the first year of my business is just reaching out and being kind of greedy about it. I'm like, hey, I need some advice. I had coffee with a friend yesterday, I met another mentor, and I was like, how do I do this part? Because my thing that I'm working on right now is pacing. When you spend a lot of time tilling the soil and planting seeds of authentic, real, genuine relationships, sometimes those things sprout at the same time. And because I genuinely care about these people, I want to say yes to everybody. And then I'm not operating in alignment with what my body needs, which is a pace that allows me to rest here and there, right? So I said, I don't know, how do you do this? And he gave me some really good tips for how to talk about your needs for pacing, right? And say I'm booked until the middle of May or June or whatever it is, and then I might have space for this at this time on this term, and if you need something more, we might need to wait to September. Like having someone to give you the language in those moments is so good. We're all learning and we're all trying to figure out how to do these conversations, and so you can get nervous and your adrenaline's pumping. It's hard to do it well and gracefully, right? The funniest one that I heard was that it's like dating. Like you can come on too strong, right? So there's like a balance between being chill and normal and being like, some people they have the conversation. This happens to me sometimes when people are selling services to me. I think we're friends. We've been out for coffees, we shared our stories, and then I get 5 emails in 5 days about their services, and I'm like, oh, like I get hurt. I'm like, I thought we were friends. What happened? Right? So I was like, so in like the dating context, I'm like, yeah, it's just too much too soon. And then the other side's true too, where it's like, yeah, if you show no interest, odds are good you're not going to have a relationship or an engagement. And so it's sort of like just being a human about it and going, okay, we had a great conversation, and then I was out for a walk, and oh, I remembered this great book this person would love. I'm just going to send them a note and say, I was thinking about you on my walk the other day, and there's this really great book, and you know, if you want to carry the conversation on from what we were talking about, I'm available. And also, just so funny, because now I always think about it in terms of like, it's just reminding yourself to be a regular human in a regular relationship. Well, you know, it's a business, so you have to do that part too. I always think about like honing my antenna so that it's easy for people who need me to see what they need in that antenna. And then we'll see. Like I'm talking like I know all the answers, but I don't. I've just started on my journey and it's going really well so far. I'm busy, I'm booked, I'm healthy, I'm happy. I'm doing, I think, the best work I've ever done in my whole career with people I genuinely like. So, knock on wood, hopefully I'm on to something.
So, last question to close out. What's one bold move you're preparing to make next?
Okay, because we're friends, I'm going to tell you what's one bold move that I'm looking to make next. And I'm hoping that in saying it out loud to you here, it creates a sense of accountability for myself. I have a podcast that I'm developing and a book that I'm writing that I started in my self-imposed secondment and really invested a lot of time and energy, really focused on leadership in this new model where businesses are purpose and profit driven. I think that the thin edge of the wedge is leaders and leadership and developing new ways of leading in these systems. And so I've got a podcast and a book that are targeted on that. And I got busy, and so I put them on the back corner. I kind of threw my books in the corner for a while. But it really, truly is, like, talking to other leaders and developing this body of work is really fulfilling. And so that's what I'm hoping to be able to, like, if I get good at pacing, then I can still do that piece and contribute that way. So here, I've said it now, I've committed. It's like a contract.
It is. In Switzerland, I think oral contracts are legally binding, Jen. It's set in stone. Plus the internet, right?
Yeah, I'll have people being like, how's that book coming along? And I will appreciate that if I do get that. I'll be like, thank you. That's a reminder to work on pacing so that I have time to do this work.
Thanks so much, Jen. I really appreciate this conversation, all of the insights and the nuggets that you've shared, and the way that things are unfolding for you and how you just lean into the energy and what feels right. And I hope you find many more friends. I'm sure you will.
Thank you for having me. This has been, I always find when I talk to folks like you and get a chance to share my story and what I'm trying to do, it reaffirms what I'm trying to do, and so I'm going to go forward for the rest of the day and the week and the months to come, recommitted to this path that I've stepped into, that I'm enjoying and getting a lot out of. So thank you for creating the space for me to do that today.